Elizabeth Warren, as well as other congressmen, are now calling for the Internal Revenue Service and the Federal Trade Commission to investigate tax software companies and their efforts to hide their free filing options from search engines. So now, look, you guys, tax season is over, right? People now are waiting for their returns, or some, in many cases, have already received their returns. But when you're filing taxes, I mean, there's not a lot of free options out there. Yes, there are companies that do offer so-called free options, but they're extremely difficult to find and to get to. And most people don't actually know that they're available to free file. So now you have a lot of these tax prep companies that are making billions of dollars off people that just have to file their taxes. And Elizabeth Warren and a lot of progressives are like, no, well, now wait a minute. That doesn't make sense. People should have the option to be able to free file and to make it really easy for people to free file. So now in a letter to the IRS and the FTC, Warren had written, quote, hiding free file from the public clearly aligns with the financial interests of these companies because taxpayers are more likely to encounter and use their fee-based services, which are easily found through search engines. So now there are ways that, of course, you can mess with search engines, using the keywords and Google AdWords, etc., things like that. You can make it easier or more difficult for things to get found on the internet. And so these companies, which have their free file options, are basically choosing not to advertise this. And so they don't advertise it, they don't spend money on advertising or keywords, etc. Then it's not going to show up when you Google tax prep companies. So now Elizabeth Warren's like, why? Why? Oh, we know why. It's because you guys want to make money, of course. Now, she continues in her letter, for the same reason, it has likely increased prices for low-income consumers who should have had access to free file, but were understandably unaware of the specific IRS website that may have led them there. Now, again, this is based on a ProPublica report, which revealed how these companies are kind of messing with search results in order to make sure that they continue making money, that people are uninformed of the free option that they actually have. Now, congressional staff found the websites of 3 other companies that have signed on to the IRS Free File program, TaxSlayer, TaxHawk Inc.'s Free Tax USA, and Drake Software's 1040.com had used similar code to hide their truly free offerings from Google and other search engines. The letter to the FTC, signed by 14 other Democratic members of Congress, 7 each from the House and the Senate, including Senator Cory Booker, Bernie Sanders, Ron Wyden, and many others. Senators from the House include Brad Sherman and Katie Hill, both of California, and Tim Ryan of Ohio. Now, not only does this letter ask the FTC to investigate whether the tax companies are engaging in unfair and deceptive practices, the letter also cites antitrust law, banning conspiracy and restraint of trade. Also, now, if you're hiding your search results for, competition with your, say, okay, you've got your free file option that, is available to people under a certain income that you don't actually have to pay fees to have this filed, and then you're paid, and you make sure to bury your paid option because you made an agreement with Congress, and I'll explain that in a minute, saying that, oh, we promised to have a free file, so long as the IRS does not develop their own and advertise it. And then, of course, what they do is that they bury that option so that you only see the free one. And so they're basically competing against themselves and making sure that in that competition, their paid option wins out. So now, that letter to the IRS Commissioner Charles Rettig asks that the agency take action to remove the companies from the program and ensure that tax preparation companies that charge free file eligible taxpayers to file their taxes refund their fees. That's awesome. Oh, you screw people out of money? Make them pay when they didn't actually need to pay? All right, well, you're just going to return that money then. That's awesome. See, that's why I like Elizabeth Warren. Now, I'm not saying she's my first choice for president, right? but I like a lot of what she says and what she does. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is the same thing. That was the brainchild of Elizabeth Warren. So you got to give her credit, and here she is trying to do the same thing that the CFPB was created to do. Now, unfortunately, of course, Mick Mulvaney has taken over and completely hobbled that agency, but what do you expect from Republicans, right? So now, look, you guys, I think we can all agree, filing your taxes sucks. It sucks. And so is paying for someone to file your taxes, to do your taxes. Now, I never thought about it before, right? Because it's like, we thought, necessary evil, right? You got to pay somebody to do your taxes, especially if your taxes are difficult. Like, for example, when it comes to running a business or being an independent contractor, boy, that is not easy, right? There's a lot of things that you can potentially mess up and end up getting an audit from. Now, if you're like a 1040 person, gets a normal paycheck, etc., and files with your 1040 easy, you could probably do it yourself and avoid some of these fees. But not everybody's able to do that. Not everybody wants to be able to do that, right? And besides, there's no reason that the IRS, who already has all of our information, can't just create their own thing with the fields already populated with the information. But there is a reason that they don't do that. It's not as if we don't have the technology. They already have the technology. A lot of other countries actually use that technology and allow people to file for free very, very easily without involving these for-profit corporations. But in America, we don't have that. Why? It's because of corporate lobbying, right? They have made it purposely difficult to file the taxes. These companies, the report mentions, are all part of something called the Free File Alliance. Oh, now that's a very Orwellian name because guess what? It's not actually the Free File Alliance at all. They signed a deal with the IRS to offer free preparation and filing services to many Americans. In exchange, the IRS said they wouldn't develop their own service. So now what's the problem, right? That sounds great. These companies have a free option, except for the problems that I mentioned before early in the video. You have these companies that have hidden their free file options to make sure that you don't know, that you don't find them. They don't advertise them, not necessarily. And so it makes it very difficult for the people who are eligible for the free file to find it. So, anyway, now, there is a bill, and this before was an implicit agreement, right? Now you have a bill that's looking to make this into law. It's called the Taxpayer First Act. And again, Orwellian, right? Now, it's been sponsored by the House, by Democratic Representative John Lewis and Republican Representative Mike Kelly, and the Senate by Finance Committee Chair Chuck Grassley and Democrat Ron Wyden. Now, I have to note, and I've talked about this before, it doesn't actually ban the IRS from designing their own product, but they have to give a year's notice to these companies. That's in the agreement, and that will be in the law. So if the IRS decides, you know what, we're going to make our own free file and preparation service for people, right? For all taxpayers or all taxpayers under a certain amount of income, whatever they decide to do. We have to give these companies, we can't do it for a year, and we've got to give them a heads up. Well, now how fair is that? It's very likely that in the event that this would happen, the tax preparation industry would be able to challenge the IRS if they tried to do that. So they would use that year to go, oh, no, we're going to lobby some more to maybe water down that law. That's the whole purpose of giving them extra time, so they can water it down and make sure that these companies still end up making a ton of money. That's the whole point. That's the whole point. And you guys, you might think, well, wait a minute, Jeff, the year, that sounds reasonable, right? No, these guys are middlemen. You have to understand, I hate tax prep companies. I despise them. Why? It's because they serve no purpose other than to extract money from the middle class and the poor. When there is a free option and when the government could actually do it better, they could prepare it and then file it for free for all taxpayers, they could do a better job of it. It makes no sense to have these companies around extracting profit. There's no purpose. There's no purpose. This whole thing reminds me of microtransactions, right? Let me go to my nerdy roots and talk about gaming for a second, right? So there are video games that have come out that have a lot of microtransactions, right? So game like microtransactions vary game to game, right? It's giving you a kind of a simple synopsis of this. So there are certain games that have certain items that are up in their cash shop, and they go, hey, you know what? We're going to artificially slow down rewards and experience points, and then put this magical item in our cash shop that speeds it up. That kind of sounds like what they're doing here, except for, for tax prep companies, we're going to prevent the government from being able to make their own tax filing and preparation service so that we can sell our microtransaction. Now, gamers, those of you who are gamers, when you have these microtransactions that are so blatantly obvious, like, we get pissed. We're angry. It's like, how dare you? That's the whole Star Wars Battlefront 2 thing in a nutshell. We're consumer revolt, right? But we don't do that for taxes, for the tax situation. I think it's because so many of us just don't know. We're unaware. And we're unaware that we could actually have free preparation and filing through the IRS. So maybe it's time that we start to think about that and go, hey, wait a minute, why are we allowing these companies to screw us over in that way? And so that's what this is. And so if you're not enraged, maybe you should think about it, and maybe you should be. And this is why this legislation and this discussion is so important. That's why I'm so glad there are progressives out there, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders. That's why they're out there trying to fight this, and why I love it, to show you how you're being screwed, and then, more importantly, to try to fix it. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know how I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent progressive media.